Is it off? Is the TV off?
Yeah, we got the picture. Oh, here,
It's on.
it's on.
You just can't see it. So you can start.
All right. I mean, with broadcasting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Gloucester School Committee to order. Remind everybody that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings such as an in-person meeting with the school committee is not possible. The meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time to participate when necessary. We're going to go into executive session and we will come out of executive session around 7 o'clock and go back into public session, at which point we'll go through all of this again. The Gloucester School Committee will meet in executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A, for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining with the GTA, GAPE, Teamsters, AFSCME, and nurses, and will be returned to open session at approximately 7 o'clock. I so move.
Second.
Maria, do we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Fogle,
Here, yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Ms. Watson
Yes.
and Ms. Weezer.
Yes.
We have a quorum with 5 members present, and we're going to go into executive session. We'll see everybody back at 7 o'clock.
Right, no problem, lady. We might.
I have to turn off my sound?
Are we, is that one?
Are we on? Okay. Welcome back. I'm going to call this meeting of the Gloucester School Committee back to order. We had met, came into order earlier at 6 and went into executive session, and we're now opening the public meeting. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings, such that an in-person meeting of the school committee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. If you are calling in on the phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communication to be recognized to speak. And I will remind everybody that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. So I look around the slide.
It's way back there.
And I'm going to ask you all to join me in the student pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to open oral communications. Oral communications, the public shall have the opportunity at every regular school committee meeting to be heard under oral communications. Oral communication shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to the school committee business to appear before the school committee, state their problem without debate, and the matter may be referred to the proper subcommittee. For items that are on the agenda, members of the public may address the committee with the permission of the chair. Persons speaking under oral communication shall be limited to 3 minutes each and shall submit a copy of their prepared communications to the recording secretary. The school committee chair shall not allow complaints as to individual performance or character. That being said, I'm going to open oral communications. Is anybody who would like to address the school committee? All right, we have At the moment, we have, besides our panelists, we have 6 attendees. All right, I'm going to close oral communications, seeing nobody's hand or anybody jumping up and down. So we'll move on to comments from chairperson. I think I'll reserve those for perhaps later, and we'll move on to recognitions.
Maybe you recognize what's going on outside.
Yeah, right. Well, who wants to talk about it? We have a soccer game going on. We just got a quick glimpse. The score at halftime is 2-1. Gloucester's behind, but they scored right at the end of the first half.
Just congratulations to the team.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
It's unbelievable. They're in the second. They got a bye for the first round, so they're essentially in the third round of the playoffs of soccer team, and they look good. Yeah.
Just a belated recognition to generous gardeners who helped out with the gardens at Beaman in late September. They helped, and apparently they're also going to come back in the spring. So just wanted to recognize them, thank them for that generosity.
Anything else? Okay, moving on. Our student advisors are all at the game, and so they let us know that they would not be here tonight. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anybody would like to pull out for further discussion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda. Second.
And Maria, could we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Favazza.
Yes.
Chairman Pope.
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Ms. Watson.
Yes.
And Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't pull it out, but I would just like to recognize the contribution of $400 from the Robert Natty Story Corner purchase for the purchase of books. As long as I've been on the school committee, this has come in every year, and they give it to libraries to purchase books, and they on a rotating basis. And it's in honor of Robert Natty, who was guidance counselor when I was here. I think he might have been principal and late after that. And it's quite a good man. So his family does this to recognize him. So, moving on, superintendent's report.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We just pull up, so we're going to give you an update on a few things tonight. And we're going to go in a little bit different order. We're going to have to, I'll give you an update on COVID, particularly some latest news from the high school. Then we're going to do the modulars and at Beaman Plum Cove. And then we're going to do the MCAS report because our, as you can see, our K-5 principals are here. And then we'll go into enrollment and then my goal in the evaluation process. That's okay with everyone? Okay, great. So we first present this. I just see what's being presented. So as we have said all year long and continue to say and continue to work on every single day in our schools is our primary objective for the year, safely educating all students in our schools every day, maximize learning, address our students' full needs and support community and family needs. And we're certainly seeing this year more than ever that supporting students' full needs means supporting them social, emotionally, and also supporting their mental health. And as we go along during the year, we'll be giving you more updates about all the work that's happening in those areas. Just yesterday, I was at Plum Cove and saw some of our kindergartners working on some mindfulness. So different breathing techniques to relax and stay focused, and they were enjoying that. It wasn't done quite the way that I do yoga, but it was appropriate for kindergartners and I think quite helpful. But it was great to see them and their teachers, and also Principal Jewett and myself participating a little bit as well in the bubble breath and the rainbow breath. So I can show that to you later if you like. An important COVID update this week. So we've had some recent developments at the high school, which I'll get into in more detail. I want to show you. Sorry, I didn't. The dates are wrong here. It's actually, this is reversed. There were 5 total cases 2 weeks ago. There are 14 total cases right now, actually 13 total cases right now. So the numbers in the schools are correct, okay? The numbers in these totals are not. I did not change the header, I apologize for that. We had 5 active cases at our last meeting, it's on the 22nd. Right now, we have 13 active cases across our schools. You can see there's lots of zeros and ones in the right-hand column, which is today, but you see the 8 at the high school. I'll go into more depth on that in a moment. I always show you how our cases fluctuate, and we continue the pattern of up one meeting down the next. We're up to 13 cases right now. We were at 14 cases earlier in October, this is a month ago, and down to 5 cases on October 27th. The matter now is that of the 13 cases that are active, most of them, 8 of them, are at the high school. In the city, 34 active cases. That's lower than the city was at, I think, in the beginning of September, but higher than it was for the last few weeks. And as you can see, 21 new cases in the prior week. I will say, importantly, that the wastewater results are going higher for the last couple weeks. They're spiking up some. Typically, that means that the city will also increase as well. We're seeing some of that, but I'm not here nor am I qualified to predict on what that means for the upcoming, but we do see the increase in cases across the city is being is also showing the wastewater results. So I can say about that. So on the recent case at GHS, and I will say, we put out communication Monday, then also today to the GHS community. There have been 8 new cases since the weekend. These cases are all in the 12th grade, which is notable. On Monday, we had 40+ students sent home for reporting symptoms after being tested. So if a student is in any of our schools and they report having symptoms, they go to the nurse's office, they're given a rapid test, and they know at that point whether they're positive or not from that test. Typically, if they have symptoms, we also send them home, regardless if they're positive. Sometimes we don't, if it's just a headache, that is a COVID symptom in conjunction with other symptoms. If they have a headache, they tested negative, we will send them back to school because it isn't a combination of symptoms, so that sort of thing. But that's what our nurses do every day. But at the high school on Monday and Tuesday, very high numbers of kids reporting symptoms. Fewer today, so it's decreasing as the week goes along. But what's really, really important is, I'll say this again and again, and we've been reiterating this in our communications from the high school. Something that our families, staff, students did so well last year that we need to continue doing and do a better job of is if folks have symptoms, students or staff, is they stay home. Okay, we cannot have folks coming into our schools either just to get tested or having symptoms and saying they think they're okay. That will really lead to more and more folks getting ill, whether that's the common cold, a flu, or perhaps COVID. So, but we'll keep on communicating that. Our principals are communicating that. I'll communicate that. I'm telling you that.
We have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, sure. For events, so I went to a concert recently and you had to either show up with your Vax card or with a negative test taken within the last 72 hours. For events, extracurricular, non-academic events, if a system like that had been in place, potentially that would have, resolved or would have prevented whatever may have happened at semi, right? So something to think about going forward as other, junior event comes up and sophomore event and to say, hey, listen, we're going to treat this like any other public event where vaccination or vaccination, if you're not, get a test before you go to prom.
So that's something I think we should consider, and that's up to the committee, and Mike and I can bring it forward. We haven't gotten there yet. There's public events and there are private events, and those are handled differently right now. I mean, in community by community,
Sure.
organization by organization. So we haven't. We'll talk more about athletics in a moment, in a little bit, but that's another area we could consider it. But I think it's. We're going to have to get there at some point to at least consider it and make a thoughtful decision. Yeah. And also I'll give folks a little bit more about that testing and some of the good news on testing, also some of the complications around testing that we're experiencing, which all ties into this.
So my question is, I'm hearing you loud and clear about students staying home if they have symptoms. I'm just wondering, is the school district lenient when it comes to the attendance policy? Because I know that's a concern for some families with absentees and our policy that we have for attendance. So I'm wondering what the district's position is.
There aren't any major consequences for not attending school, okay? And teachers always allow kids to make up work if they're absent, obviously. So, so I don't think, I'm not quite sure what we mean by lenient. We don't, so, I mean, I think we're quite lenient in terms of absences, whether it's this year or other years, for instance.
Well, we have an attendance policy that we worked out on a few years ago. So I'm just wondering.
True.
But that-
And
but it sounds to your reaction, that's
We
my
want, we want folks that are sick to stay home,
Stay home.
regardless of what any attendance policy we ever had. Yeah, that's super important.
Yeah.
What we do know about these cases is it's, last year, like I keep saying, things were simpler. We had a better idea of connections. This year, because just people are living their lives in a more normal fashion, not normal, more normal. We're seeing that there's a combination of out-of-school connections, in-school connections, semi-formal certainly. There are connections there as well in terms of where kids are sitting, that sort of thing, and obviously dancing. We see that the group that are positive and they're close contacts, and there've been a lot of close contacts, isn't just they have connections in school. It's all over, and that just makes contact tracing complicated. The health department and our schools are working closely. We're focusing on in-school close contacts. They're focusing on out-of-school close contacts, but we're working closely on that. But it is a much more complicated picture than the past. And this is a moment where, so let me talk more about what we're doing with the high school. I mentioned some of this already in terms of identifying close contacts. More than 150 students have been identified as close contacts over the last few days. Many qualify for test and stay, but also many don't because they're vaccinated. What we're continuing to do is we're monitoring this every day, providing information to families. We're continuing outreach to GS families, continuing to work with the Gloucester Health Department. And then most importantly, we're expanding testing beyond what we're normally allowed to do. So this afternoon, there's parent outreach to specific students' families who have been in classes with students been in classes where there's been more than one positive student. Okay. I'll talk more about the guidelines from our state testing program. For example, if you're vaccinated, okay, adult or student, you don't actually qualify to be tested in school, okay? But we're waiving that at this point for those folks who've been in the classes where there's been more than one student positive, okay? And so we'll do that additional testing on Friday. We want to test as widely as we can up to this point, and then also we're connected with the State Department of Health and State Department of Education to see if we need to go further.
Did you have a question?
No, sorry.
Just to clarify, so if you're vaccinated, you can't say participate in pool testing?
No, you can present pool testing,
Okay,
yes.
so just,
To test and stay, you're exempt from it.
okay,
It's really test and stay you're exempt from. If you're symptomatic, if you have symptoms when you're in school, okay, I'm separating that from, we don't want people to come from home with symptoms into school,
Right.
okay? But if you come down with symptoms during the day, vaccinated or not, you can get tested.
Okay.
If during the weekly COVID check or the pool testing, if vaccinated or unvaccinated, you can participate in that.
Okay.
It's really just the test and stay where you're exempted from it, basically. Okay. Other questions?
So you're exempted from it, meaning you stay.
You stay, right, exactly.
And so you're not, right, you just aren't being tested regularly.
Right, you're monitored for symptoms and
Right.
you stay. Right,
Okay.
right, yeah. And that's something that it takes a lot of reminders.
Yeah.
Okay, it takes, and the Department of Health is communicating with families if they're out of school contacts. And if you're out of school contact, there are different rules than if you're in school contact,
Right.
okay? But they're handling that and doing a better job on that. We're handling it in school. I will say that I'm not gonna, I'll be just clear that the last 3 or 4 days for those two teams has been in school, nurses in school, and has been very taxing. This is a lot of kids we're dealing with, a lot of families we're trying to support. You know, so, but I feel like, I mean, I thought, listen, we're at a point where, and we were at this point last year in a few different schools, where, you know, do we go up or do we go down? Okay, and so we have to watch very, very closely every single day. And, you know, so far, Gloucester, you know, whether it was, you know, last November, which was a city issue, or in our schools, we've always, you know, went down. But we've got to watch it closely. And then people need to take it seriously. You know, I know people are tired of this. They're tired of masks. They're tired of symptoms. They're tired of just that level of concern. But we will continue to communicate and support and tell people as clearly as we can that there's still things we have to do to make sure we're safe. But we've covered some of this already, but I just want to be clear about who we're allowed to test. So students and staff who come down with symptoms during the school day, I mentioned that. Student and staff who are school in school close contacts at 3 feet or closer. Okay, if you're beyond 3 feet, you're exempted. And then students and staff who are not vaccinated are allowed to test. Students and staff who are vaccinated, again, this is the test and stay really. So students and staff who are vaccinated, we don't test and stay. Out of school close contacts, we don't test and stay. In school contacts who are more than 3 feet, we don't test and stay. And then students who arrive at school just to be tested. Okay. And we of course would love to test anybody and everybody, but we're using a state program that's supplying all the materials and all the staff. And so there are limits on that, understandably. And we're not at testing centers, we're still for schools, but we are, you know, really, really pleased that we're able to use these resources, this program, to do all that we are doing, which is a lot more than last year. And it's across all schools as well, so. So any more on that? Okay, we'll keep you updated, keep our families updated. So here's another challenge on testing. So we have better registration for our weekly COVID safety checks, but we're also not testing all the folks that are registered right now. And part of that is because, well, the primary reason for that is last year we were able to, our staff who were doing the testing for the weekly COVID testing or pool testing, would come into Gloucester High or O'Malley, and because we had longer periods or a specific longer period when they were there, they'd get through the whole building at once. So they knew when they went to a classroom exactly who had signed up for testing, for the weekly testing. This year, because we have the rotating schedule back, when they come, they can't get through the whole building in that one period. So then everyone changes. So it's not possible to go with class lists. So, I mean, so far it hasn't been. So what happens now is instead of going to a classroom and calling out the names of who's going to be tested, our staff, the state staff and Jeff Parko and Kylie Davis are saying anyone who signed up for weekly testing, come get tested. And potentially people are opting out of that moment, or not, they're deciding not to go and do it for any number of reasons. And but so we are going to be working with our state partners this week and next to come up with a different approach to those two schools to make sure we have a much higher participation rate. We have a higher registration rate than last year, and we'll keep on pushing that, but the participation each week is much lower than it should be. But we'll keep working at it. It is the single. I'm participating in the weekly testing at the preschool building, and literally, like it is a level of confidence that I have living with my mother-in-law or being with my mom that I haven't had for a long, long time. I mean, since COVID began. And so it's a little swab, 5 to 7 loops in this nostril, 5 to 7 in that nostril, and the level of comfort is just it's great to be able to go home and know that I'm safe. So we'll keep pushing this. And student vaccination rates last week or last meeting, you did have some discrepancies where we noted that during some of the data was inaccurate. So this is updated and corrected. You can see, so on the bigger numbers here are this week. You can see there's been some progress from September from 60 to 64% 7th grade. 12th grade is about 73% now. So we're ticking up very, very slowly. And hopefully we'll do some more now on this.
No,
Are you gonna start giving us data on the younger kiddos?
Sure, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
I've reached out to this health department. And Kate Ban is also doing some vaccination clinics. The health department so far has been really focusing on boosters and congregate housing. And they have been having clinics for sort of very high priority groups. They're not sure they'll have the capacity to put on clinics for pediatric clinics. If they can, we can host them in our schools. We won't host them, won't be our staff doing it, but like we've done in the past, work with a partner. So I'm not sure we're gonna do that, but if we have if the city has the capacity to do that, or Cape Ann has different communities working together, then we're happy to host them in our schools. Just don't want to be really have our folks involved in the industry.
Yeah, it seems like people are accessing them just fine through like CVS, Walgreens.
Yeah,
You know, it's very different than when every adult in the world was trying to get them.
Right. And the state has been very clear about that's where they want, you know, that's where the priority is. So, so I'm not saying we're gonna do it, but if we can, but those are some serious ifs I'm getting. So, yeah. So update on winter athletics. So as we thought, the MIA has not given any guidelines on winter sports. No competition or play adjustments like last year, for example. There were no tip-offs in basketball, and there was no, I think, inbounds from the sidelines or something like that. They made certain accommodations in terms of the rules of play. They're not doing that, and they're also not giving any guidance on health and safety either. We are going to require masks for all indoor sports at all times, including during competition. Just like, you know, there's school facilities, you wear a mask, whether you're doing a play in classroom or doing athletics. But limited use of locker rooms. Talking to Brian LaFada today, we'll spread students out at the O'Malley rink and use multiple locker rooms. The NEC is not having any limits on spectators, and only Salem is requiring testing for student athletes. If we want to consider that, I can, you know, look into it further and come back with a recommendation to the committee. But that's,
frequently Salem testing.
sorry,
How frequently is Salem testing?
they're doing the weekly testing. It's really, for them, it's been a requirement since school began. So it's not just for athletes, it's for all students. I think also, I want to say Chelsea's doing the same thing.
For every student, Salem's requiring testing.
Yeah, I think, that's what I've been told.
Who's doing all that testing?
I do not know.
So, two questions. One, if we're requiring masks for all indoor sports at all times, including competition, so that means visiting teams as well.
Yeah.
So we'll be requiring any team visiting, even if they're not accustomed. Okay. And secondly, my recollection is that last winter, there was some question about hockey, ice hockey, and why that seemed to be a source of, not specifically at Gloucester High, but sort of throughout, you know, the Commonwealth. It seemed to be a place where COVID was spreading. Have we learned any more about that? Or how to, you know, sort of how to prevent that going into this winter?
I have not. I don't know, have any more information. What we could do is I could ask Max Schenk to give us any information he has about that.
Yeah.
Perhaps the next meeting.
That would be great. And I would like more information about how we could require testing for student athletes.
One of the complications on testing, just and this isn't, it's not. We're having registration and participation complications now. That's one of the major issues.
Right.
You know, meaning in terms of folks opting, and then that was a challenge last in the spring too. But at the same time, anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Can I ask if they're getting tested, do they have to wear masks
In school,
for the event? So there's a suggestion that you wear masks and get tested?
You mean
Or
Salem?
like Salem?
I don't know what Salem's, I
Or
don't
are
know.
they
I don't
getting
know.
tested and not having to wear masks?
I don't think that's the case. I think they're fully Salem. I mean, they have, I mean, at this point, we're required to mask,
Right.
so. yeah.
Or
I
in
mean,
the
that's
building.
statewide. I think before we move on to modulars and capital things, I'd make a hard left turn here.
Just one on the COVID front.
Yeah.
I don't know if how this, the contact tracers are finding, but are there more unmasked out of school events going on with students? And I mean, I don't know if we know that, but if so, like, do you want to send a message to families about the dangers of that?
My next message to families, which may happen on Friday, may happen on, Monday morning or Sunday night, will be very direct in terms of taking care of yourself, taking care of others. Wearing masks at all times, masks, make safe, or you're safer when you're doing that. I'm not requiring things, but I'm trying to lead the way where we're giving a clear message about what's safe. And that will mean, you've got to pay attention, just like, got to pay attention when you're out and about, how you're operating, and while vaccinations, have changed things in so many ways, we still have, in terms of the cases at the high school, some are vaccinated, some are not. But that's happening again and again, okay? Breakthrough cases aren't rare anymore, aren't as rare. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, while we've changed a lot of things, the way COVID operates hasn't changed. It still will affect people regardless of, unless you're operating in a way that's really safe. And so because of that, we have to continue to be vigilant, and I'll communicate that. Now, and be clear about that.
Because as we head into holidays, of course, the message
Yeah.
becomes even more.
And I think what's important to reiterate is that with so many people vaccinated, yes, the risk to one person's health might go down, but it's still our protocols, not our protocols, but state protocols is such that it's very disruptive to students' learning. They miss many days of school. Many students miss many days of school when there are lots of cases in our schools. And it's disruptive to people's lives, it's disruptive to people's work schedules. So I think that continues to be sort of the missing messaging, right? Because people are not as scared of this because they're vaccinated. For like Gloucester in general, speaking of in generalities, because Gloucester is highly vaccinated. But we still are requiring that people have to stay out of the building when positive or when they're in close contact outside of the school.
Yeah.
Which is very disruptive
Yeah.
in everybody's lives.
Yeah.
So until those protocols are not there, people still need to really think about how impactful that is to students' learning.
And the thing that's important there is, when we're in school, we know that the contact is limited in a given case.
Right.
It could be a kid who, we know the timing typically, or we know it was a class period. That changes when folks are outside, and those contacts can be very, very close and for long periods of time because people are being human, but COVID doesn't really care about that, so it's just a question of, I think it's important for us, our school leaders and myself, as just to keep reminding people, people make their choices. I understand that, and that's okay. But I think it's paramount for us to keep reminding people. Because it does impact our school community, it does impact our staff, our students, our families. All right, hard left turn.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna give, so I won't go, so you've had this presentation, I'm gonna go through some new information because the members wanted some additional information after I presented about ensuring that Beaman and Plum Cove are viable for at least 10 more years. And remember last time we focused on renovation and replacement of the modulars. We're hoping tonight to get a vote from the committee on a path to recommend to the mayor and city council. Just to summarize, the estimated cost of renovation would be $3.1 million. That's for the 9 modulars at Beaman and the 6 modulars at Plum Cove. Estimated cost of replacement is $7 million. My recommendation is to pursue renovation. It achieves the major objective of extending the life of both schools by at least 10 years. Substantially less cost, and also can be completed in a timely fashion, presumably in this summer. I want to get to the meat of this without repeating too much. Just a quick reminder, the renovation. Sorry, just looking at updates from James Cook.
Any good news or,
Score?
It's still 2-1. And not in our favor, 10 minutes to go. Okay,
10
sorry.
minutes to leave and go.
Sorry, what?
We brought them left when we went, we should go back.
Okay, guys can vote on that, I'll keep going. The renovation would be pretty significant, but depending, on each unit, on each modular, so, the siding, roofs, HVAC, doors and windows, finishes, electric improvements, general conditions, and then also, allowing for contingency, that's part of the budget, allowing for contingency. Doesn't mean every single room needs all of this, but across all 15 modulars, there's some of this in all places. Replacing would have to, would happen at the earliest in 2023. There is some cost escalation because it's a little further out. In addition to that, there's an ongoing repair and maintenance of the two buildings, which will have to continue to happen as it has been happening. What I'm proposing now is that we would do exterior painting in the summertime of both places, and that's to the tune of $160,000. If you vote tonight, it would be to do both of these, okay, and recommend to the mayor to do both of them as a package, as one project. Okay,
paint the schools?
the painting schools and either renovating or replacing, exactly right. So the question was, one of the questions that came up was, what if we did fewer modulars at Beaman and made some adjustments? And so what I'm going to show to you tonight are some Beaman, some space needs around the district, okay? Also the impact of reconfiguring Beaman into a K-4 school, also, or reconfiguring Beaman into a 2-section school, which is 2 classrooms per grade, and any potential cost savings of addressing fewer modulars at Beaman. So Beaman specific needs, okay, with all the modulars in use, they'll continue to, so right now, as of right now, Jody, Genoti's here to ask to give any more details if you need them. There's no private space for occupational, speech, or physical therapists. Those services are either meeting in rooms with multiple students or multiple groups, or in hallways, or sometimes in the principal's office. 2 offices are shared by 6 staff members. I mean, that's 2 different offices, each have 6 staff members in them. And those folks are providing that support to students. The library is reduced to half the size of half a classroom, and it doesn't have any tables for students to work on or work at. They're sitting on the floor when they're there. And the staff room doubles as a conference room for IEP meetings and other student support meetings, which means essentially that those types of meetings can't be scheduled during staff lunchtime. So those needs will continue regardless of how many modulars we have at Beaman, or how many students we have at Beaman. Just system-wide space needs, we talked about some of these. The family is right now one of the reasons we don't meet at the conference room at 2 Blackburn is because it's being used as office staff workspace, but also a family resource and registration center. So we can always use space for that. The district office, we need permanent space for 20 employees. We have transportation office that's shared with the emergency operations center. We could use an office that is dedicated just to that. And then we have no rooms across the district really during the school day, when most of our folks are working, for training purposes, basically. So those are the types of things that even if we downsize Beaman for some reason, we could use these rooms for. And could you put them to use immediately, essentially. The elementary space needs, so it's likely will we continue to look into whether we need additional special education programs at the elementary level. That will require 2 classrooms plus staff workspace. Don't know if we'll need that at this point, but we anticipate something like that might happen. And also earlier we've been asked, you've heard me talk about, we want to bring back all our students who are opting into other districts, we want to bring them back, and the question which was raised to me, which is a very good question, was, what about what those are the students, and when they come back, where are we gonna go? So we could potentially need classrooms in the district for that as well. So the other piece then is, so that's sort of just trying to be clear that would be very hard, and I think unwise, for districts, like ours in this day, to let go of space we have. Okay, I think that's typically something schools do and then live to regret it. In terms of reconfiguring Beaman to a K-4 school, meaning moving the Beaman 5th grade to O'Malley, I would not recommend that.
Why are we talking about that?
What's that?
Why is it a question?
It was questions.
Oh, it
that were asked.
was?
Yeah, school committee member, school committee raised a question. And I'm just
I don't
answering the question.
remember this one, that's why.
Okay.
I just think it's confusing.
A couple reasons for that. One is to have one school, like if you had a 5 to 8, that can make sense for the whole system. To have one school that is simply a K-4 and one group of students, one group of families goes to O'Malley to have the 5th grade there, that's disruptive of many levels. I don't think it's actually really helpful for those 5th graders to be at O'Malley when they're the only ones there. We're talking about 60 kids or so. They're outliers in many different ways, developmentally, educationally, maturity wise, and so that doesn't make sense to me, right? And I would never recommend it, especially also have one school that's K-4 that's essentially not like the others. That puts it at a distinct disadvantage on many levels, and I think many families wouldn't want to do that very honestly, and I wouldn't support it. In terms of making it in terms of making it a 2-section school, I'm just going to go back here. A couple things. It would mean we're moving this number of students at different grade levels. Not such a big deal at the upper grade levels, but the other ones, 26, 16, and 19, that's in terms of what the current enrollment is. I wouldn't recommend that for those families, and I wouldn't recommend the school committee do that. Okay, it would be incredibly disruptive, or as you'll see, limited gains in a moment. The other piece about this is when we do go, because part of the question was about, can we move them to other schools now in advance of the new school opening? Okay, we will have to do, and we will do, reordering of our school assignment zones prior to that. But if you're going to make Beaman a 2-section school, for example, that's the timing to do it. When you address the enrollment across all the schools and school assignment zones in advance of new school opening. Okay, not to do that for this summer and then do it again the following summer. Okay, and that's really sort of what this says. Is just it makes sense to look at enrollment. It makes sense to look at school assignment, but we have the perfect opportunity to do it, and that's what the new school comes in. And then the last piece in talking with Mike Hale, just limited cost savings, if any. It's not clear from his perspective, and he knows much more about this than I do, about whether there would be savings, because if you're now only doing 3 or 6 modules of Beaman, you now have to, first of all, demolish the ones that you're getting rid of, which is probably not a lot of cost, but it's reducing the savings, okay? Plus, you have to you've got to make those. I mean, so if you chop an exterior wall off your house, you have to make another exterior wall. Okay. If you have plumbing, electric, or HVAC in those places, and it's all closed loop, which it always is, you have to then connect all those systems back together again to make a closed loop. Okay. Those things are expensive. And then also just likely then if we're moving folks to other schools or to O'Malley, if you got to reconfigure anything, then you're probably having additional costs there. So. That says to me that worth looking at, and I'm glad we did, especially because it allowed us to sort of put a real pin on our space needs, very honestly. So and I think they're significant, so we're back. So let me pause there. Any questions before we move on?
Bill?
So I really appreciate the information. Again, as I said, so I made the request, obviously, it was just because before we go spend $3 million, you know, to kind of proactively address anyone who says, I cannot believe for that money, you could have put kids here, could have put kids there, you always look very simple, but we actually did look at it, in fact. You know, same thing with, we talked last time, it's actually cheaper to do this for Plum Cove than to put them in St. Anne's and Betts is done, like, all those things were actually looked at.
Yeah.
So I think it's great.
Thank you.
One of the, so now I have a question in another direction, which is again, like, funny to me, because I'm still not a fan of these modulars in general, but in this situation seem to be the answers to these problems we're having.
Yeah.
Have we looked at like renovating 9 modular to Beaman and throwing a 10th one on, that the library can be brought back? And 10 years is a long time. That's 2 full rotations, like, you know, oh, not 2 full, K to 5, 6 years. Damn near 2 rotations full, right? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
You know, so while we're, you know, saying, okay, we're committing to these schools, and while the disparate facility gap gets bigger, because now you have West Parish, E.G. Vets, and then Beaman and Plum Cove, right? It's gonna be even more stark, because Beaman and Plum Cove are only gonna be older, right?
Right.
And West Parish is no longer the outlier. Now, the majority of elementary school students are gonna have these facilities at their fingertips, and now a minority is gonna be in these 2 schools that are waiting for their turn. You know, is there, you know, wisdom to say, okay, well, we're committing for another 10 years, we've saved a lot of money by renovating the ones that we took care of, which was all of them, which is again, awesome.
Right.
So therefore, we can actually address some of these space needs by, you know, summer of 23 or whatever, tacking 1 more on.
Right.
You know, because we've committed to being here for a decade, and then, you know, we won't buy these anymore, so we'll be in the sun permit.
I think the point, Joe, it's well taken, but I think the point is that as the superintendent said, that we're gonna consider realignment of the catchment areas when the new school opens, and that may free up
Okay.
some of that space that we renovated for library,
Okay,
for
okay.
conference room, for this and that, which is where he started and basically saying, let's not give up any space because we're gonna need it.
So there may be ability to still kind of pressure relief these schools when E.G. Vets comes online, and then reclaim some of the space that's tight right now into ancillary uses, like, you know, to give the
Yeah,
library.
I think it's hard to know to what extent. I think it's a possibility, but it's really hard to know what extent at this point, you know? I mean, this is a big ask, you know, and I appreciate can we be a little bolder, right? In terms of addressing some of the, you know, ongoing space needs that we talked about, especially at Beaman. So I think, so this would be a big deal, and I support that, you know, in terms of renovating them. I think we can look into, can we get some additional space, or can we use the space a little bit differently? The issue, the cost can come in when you're expanding the footprint. That's been clear to me in talking to Michael about that. You know, he was adamant about when we're talking about replacing, because we thought that was the most likely option. He's like, we can replace, but you can't expand the footprint, because that's where the cost comes in.
Okay,
You know?
all right.
Yeah, so it's enticing, but I say it's probably also, yeah, it's enticing. I'll leave it at that.
And if we have excess space, we can, you know, when the new school comes online, we can certainly put it to use.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it would be nice. So for example, today I met with we restarted our parent leaders meeting, monthly parent leaders meeting this morning. And Greg and I met with them, and we met remotely, because they literally don't have a space a conference room space that we can utilize easily. There was the community we can access and have access for some meetings, like our leadership team meetings, but nothing that's just sort of there to be used for many purposes, you know. So when we have space, we will always have use for it.
Anything else on the modulus? We can take the vote now. Mike? Any other
I support
questions?
you. Yeah, that's up to you guys. That's for you.
No, I was speaking to everybody.
Okay.
We might as well take a vote while it's on the table.
Is there a recommendation from the NF, or are we just doing this as a whole?
There,
Should be.
we did this as a whole, talking about it as a whole, we just did it as a whole, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, it was at the last meeting at the
Yeah,
admin.
we did have this at the last meeting and we went through this information. It was just the additional information that had been requested at the last meeting that was added tonight.
And you got the full report as well, full estimate, you know, from the DPW. Yes.
last week. So I'll make a motion that we communicate to the city that the school committee would prefer or urge the city to renovate the 9 modulars at Beaman and the 6 modulars at Plum Cove, as well as appropriating enough money for the exterior maintenance issues at both schools.
Second.
Any discussion? Melissa?
I'm just gonna say, I'm very grateful that we're finally taking this vote. It's been a long time. Mike Hill has been at many meetings, many meetings, begging us years back to get these modulars looked at and replaced and fixed and repaired. So it's really a priority. So I'm just happy to hear that this has come forward, and I thank the administration for doing all the work that they did to present the concerns we had tonight. I think this has been fully vetted, and would urge the city to support this in whatever capacity they can as soon as possible.
Yeah, hopefully the city is queued up to move on this rapidly.
So this, the renovation would not be this summer, it would be the fall.
No, we would, I mean, that's the aim. And that's what Mike and we talked about. If the city council and mayor support it, then a loan order would be placed. So we still have, that's the intention right now.
Is for this summer of 22.
Yes, that's the intention, absolutely. Yep.
Great.
That's tight, but
It's tight.
that's the goal, that's the intent.
Great.
Any further discussion? Ready for a roll call vote?
Mr. Cavazza,
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes.
It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And we move on to,
Mayor Kagan has a hand raised.
oh,
She had.
oh,
I don't even know she just came from the game.
oh,
So she's in the participant.
yeah,
Yeah.
did we move?
Randos to
There
more.
she is.
There she
She's
is.
not yet.
Yeah, I voted yes too, absolutely. I've been on the Zoom. I heard the whole thing. I saw the presentation. I just wasn't under the panelists, so,
You are
yes, I
now.
voted yes.
Okay, thank you.
And
So
I'll be
it's,
on it in 2 seconds. I'll be on the computer. So,
Okay,
but played a great game, everyone. A wonderful game. They should be proud of themselves. We lost, 2-1, but they played an awesome game. So,
It's done better than any other subject.
lower hand.
Okay, moving on to, we're going to MCAS.
Yeah, yes. Let me hand it off to Greg Bach. I do want to just acknowledge the vote. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Committee members, that's another really big step for, I mean, that's our step, and then we got to hand off to others on the city side. They've been great so far. Mike Hale, John Dunn, the mayor, and her team, and so we'll keep pushing on because it really will help those 2 schools tremendously. So thank you.
Recording in progress.
You want me to share?
I think it's might be easiest if you share the presentation.
Why don't you just start the preamble and I'll go find it.
Sure. Unless I can share from here, Maria.
I can make this, I can share.
You're welcome to share.
All set.
Only seeing half the screen. Quarter of the screen. Let's try refreshing this. Oh, hang on. There we go.
That's much better than I was doing this morning at the parent leaders meeting. which was quite embarrassing. The technical difficulties there, so they're doing a better job than me.
Okay. There we go. Sorry about that. So in keeping with the request to share more data up front in the prior week, and a little bit less this week, I shared some tables with you that would make a little tough viewing today. So I'm gonna pop them up there just as a refresher in case you haven't had a chance to take a look at them, just to orient you to them. You're welcome to take a closer look at those tables. I'll just explain what information they contain. And then if there was anything that you saw last week that you'd like to ask about or would like to come back to, that's fine. Distilled things into a little bit more compressed version for the presentation today. Tonight, we're just covering grade 3 through 5 MCAS, and at future meetings, we'll be covering middle and high school. So I just want to, as a reminder, we did not do MCAS in spring of 2020. Our last full assessment was spring of 2019. That's also the last time that we had accountability ratings from the state. And at that point in 2019, I just wanted to share this slide. I shared it at the time. The progress that we have made at the elementary schools, this is a composite average percentile rank of all 5 schools grouped together. So that represents all 5 in the district number. Our percentile rank in the state as compared to other districts was 39.6 and has climbed over that period of 2013 to 19 to the 58th percentile, which is an incredible growth, steady, a little bit of flattening in 2018-19, but still slightly upward. It's a great trend. We were interrupted in 2020, as you know, and then in 2021, the MCAS was resumed, but the conditions were quite different. And I just want to explain a few of those to help us understand why there are not accountability designations for across the state, and why we have to use the data just a little bit differently than we would for making solid comparative comparisons to other districts or schools, and why we're going to use it in a more of a diagnostic manner. In our schools, in classrooms, because the test was shortened, some where students would typically take parts A and B with more questions in the sample size. Students took either A or B. So in the same classroom, some students might be taking part A and some taking part B. Some students were tested at home without typical testing structures. That was a new frontier for assessment in Massachusetts, was to do a test like MCAS at home. And remote academy students, for the most part, did that. We did have a differential impact of remote learning and staffing. We can't pretend that remote learning was the same experience as in-class learning. And in some schools within our district, many more students came from a particular grade level. We had up to 12 from one school in one particular grade, and maybe only 2 from another, depending on who chose to go remote and who to stay in person. So when you take a look across, if we were trying to compare school to school within the district last year, there's some differences that are related to how students received their instruction last year as well. We do not have what you've seen as typical growth scores, where that's a comparison of how that student did the year before to how they did in the following year, based on how others did across the state who went from the same score how they did. So that was a great comparison to see what kind of growth there was. We did not have those. The state was not able to calculate those because of the missed year. So that's something I would not really be sharing with you tonight because we don't have that. I mentioned accountability data and designations not available in 2021. And then just in general, statewide impact of the pandemic was substantial. Given those differences in MCAS this year, I will share a sort of larger, higher level view of assessment results. In this slide, I've taken grade 3, 4, and 5. One of the sort of primary indicators for looking at things at a snapshot we might consider would be, what is our percentage of students who are meeting the expectations or exceeding? And so that group is bundled together to give a composite percentage. So for example, on the left-hand side of this, grade 3 in English language arts, 55% of our students were meeting or exceeding, and in 2019 versus 56% at the state average. And you can look down through at our 2019 results. What I'd like to draw your attention to are a couple things. On the right-hand side of this table, we now see 2021 and Gloucester Public Schools as well as the state. So where grade 3 ELA was a point behind the state average, it has that increased to 48% versus 51. 50, 49, 48, 47. What you'll notice is that though I didn't highlight them in green, because I used the green highlight for a more substantial difference, we had a higher percentage of students meeting or exceeding at grade 4 ELA, grade 5 ELA, grade 4 math, and grade 5 math. And you'll notice the math percentage of meeting and exceeding is a substantial difference from the state. The state dropped from 50 at grade 4 in 2019 to 33%. I did double check the reports because the 33s in a row made me worried. I reran them several times and looked at the state reports to confirm that those were accurate. What you will notice is there was one area where we fell a little bit more substantially for 4 percentile points, and that was in grade 3 math. In the grand scheme of things, however, if you look over on the right, I did a quick calculation for what was the percent of change between 2019 and 2021. It was pretty significant downward across the state. If we look in the far right column, in every single case, students across the state at those grade levels declined in their performance. In ELA, it was less extreme than math. So we have 8.9, 5.8, 9.6. And in math, every single one of them at the state level was over 30% change to the worst. What you'll see is that not only did grade 4 and 5 math, which are highlighted in green, outperform the state by a pretty substantial area, the negative was the percentile change to the negative was quite a bit less. So where the state went down by 34 percentile per percent, Gloucester fourth graders only by 16. So one of the conclusions that we can draw is perhaps is that the work that was done and the days in person really helped to prevent as significant achievement reduction as was observed at the state. And so our students did pretty well by comparison. This does not tell the full story because again, we're looking at just meeting and exceeding. For the full story, we need to look at all the categories. And to take a quick look at that, the next slide shows you the average scale score. And this would include the scores of all students where they were not meeting expectations or they were meeting or exceeding. So it's all 4 categories. And this scale score is important because 500 or above is meeting expectations. What you'll notice is that in 2021, every single one of our Gloucester grade level and subject areas at the elementary school had a higher scaled score than the state average. That means is that overall, when including all student scores, we were higher relative to the state. And to me, this is very good news. I know what we are identifying is some learning loss, and we're working toward that. But the good news is that we were doing well up through 2019, and despite real challenges over the last year and a half, our students remain solid and continue to learn and grow. Again, over on the far right, you'll see changes at the state level, and negative for the most part were greater than in Gloucester. But again, just to draw your attention to that one column, all scaled scores at each grade level and subject area were higher than the state average. I shared with you last week a number of reports that look like this. I'll just bring them up on screen and expand that a bit. These are, if you would like to take a deep dive into these, we won't do it tonight, but if you'd like to and you'd like me to talk about it at another meeting, or if you have a question tonight, what you'll be able to see, let me go a little bit bigger here, is you'll be able to see at each grade level and subject area the percent meeting and exceeding expectations, but you'll see it by subcategory. So those tested in person, those tested remotely. Economic disadvantage, non-economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, non-disabled, English learners, non-English learners. You'll see some breakdowns by race and ethnicity, also by gender and by high needs status, which includes is sort of a combined economic status, disability status. If you had any questions that you saw when you went through those, please, we have principals on the line as well, who can perhaps help. But again, these are for your, just for further information. Yes.
So I'm looking at like the decline both across state and across our district, and the fact that it was more drastic in math than in ELA.
Yeah.
And along the line of the idea that part of what maybe kept us from declining less than the rest of the things that we were kind of, bannered a district for having, people in person.
Yeah.
Do we still think that, the math instruction, via remote was more difficult than ELA? It's like, we're trying to figure out why this just went down.
Yeah.
So,
So we're gonna, unless there are questions on any of those detailed data pieces, I'm gonna go right on to exactly what you're asking back, because that's the one we want to think about. So mixed in, I'm gonna start with exactly what you've just asked about, but I would love to have the principals who are on share some of the detail around the bullet items for what are we doing. Two things. I'm going to answer the sort of direct from the math coaches who, when I posed the question, shared the data with them. Their first response was, doesn't surprise us at all. If math at the state level dropped over 30% in every area, some of our scores remained relatively strong compared to the state in grade 4 or 5. The one outlier was grade 3 math. So I posed that question, and they said, that doesn't surprise us at all, because with the program that we use in math, with Math in Focus, the foundational pieces that dominate the 3rd grade year are introduced in the last part of 2nd grade. So the last few months of 2nd grade is when they're getting the foundational pieces for multiplication and division. And that's going to take much of their time to rise to a level of mastery during grade 3. The other thing that we have done, and it's been very successful, is we adopted a program and practices to heavily utilize concrete, hands-on manipulatives for understanding the concepts. So if you recall, we didn't know whether students could share materials. We were very strict about not allowing them to do that. And so that included the math manipulatives that were really at the heart of those introductory pieces. Spring of grade 2 was totally disrupted. So the foundational pieces were lost. We were not able to hold summer school in that following summer. And then we were quite careful about manipulatives during their 3rd grade year. So this really pivotal moment at the end of grade 2 and grade 3, combined with how we teach math quite successfully, really I think is what was going on at grade 3. So the question is, so what are we doing to make sure that these kinds of holes are that we're helping kids to establish that foundation? And I don't want to talk the entire time, so maybe if we could have a principal, and while I'm sharing this, it's hard for me to see who's on. Okay, I see Principal Genotti, Jewett, Fusco. Oh, they're all there. Okay. Who'd like to start? Principal Genotti just popped into view, so you're up.
I would really credit our ability to add either tutors or paras at each school. We were given the choice as principals as to exactly which direction we needed to go, but they really have allowed us to expand the amount of interventions that we're giving specifically to math, which is huge. We've also made a great addition in adding our math coaches. So each one of our schools benefits from having either more math coach time or a math coach in full, which is fantastic because it really gives guidance and steers the ship. As Greg mentioned, we have an updated core math program, but we have coaches, most importantly, to lead our teachers through that new programming, to make sure that they're familiar with what's changed, to work with them in the classroom to make sure that we're making those changes effectively with our students, to help with the programming and what it is that we're building for the interventions in math. So specifically in the area of math, those have been two really huge pieces, I think, that will address some of the needs that we have and give us what we need to progress and do even better than we did. And I have to say, I think I speak for my colleagues and myself that we're really very pleased overall. Of course, we worried about what these results would look like, and they weren't anywhere near as bad as what we feared they might be, given that children had, half of a school day and some were home learning and some were in school learning. They did really well. They either really held their own with the state or in many cases surpassed, which is a lot to really be proud of.
We have several of the principles and a number of other things that have been strengthened or added this year. Would anybody else? Mr. Fusco, you want to add?
Sure, I'll talk about the next bullet. Just that we had a really robust summer program this year, led by Miss Lambert. I know she's reported on that as well as an English language summer program, which was very successful, high turnout for it, great participation. I really felt personally that students coming into school this year that were coming out of those summer programs were in really good shape to start the year off, like I had never seen before. So I think that's something to be really proud of, especially coming out of such a difficult year, and to get that up and running was really fantastic. So I think that's going to help us down the road, and also really got us caught up with some of the kids that did struggle last year through all that.
And I'd just like to interject at this moment. I'm relieved and proud of the work of the results, but also the work that we saw firsthand happening last year. The summer program was incredibly strong, really helpful for our students. We had a lot of students involved. I just want to say that 24, 25 staff members, when I talked to other districts about summer programs, they said they could not get teachers to staff them because teachers were really exhausted and needed a break. And to have so many staff members step up and do a 5-week intensive program for students. So I'm glad to hear that principals are seeing the impact. The results, assessment results showed the impact as well, but I'm just really proud of the teachers for stepping up, recognizing that this was a very important program to run this summer, and they did a fantastic job. Dr. Jewett, did you have anything you wanted to share from the list, or that's not represented?
I can talk about the other ones. Again, about the math coaches. Most schools have, by adding 2 math coaches, we have people who can really help facilitate helping teachers differentiate their lessons. So as you were saying, with 3rd graders scoring lower in math, it makes sense, which is families are more equipped to help with ELA at home, reading before bed. Families usually don't do math facts and before at bedtime. And so we know that mathematics is primarily taught in school, whereas ELA can also be taught at home with more fidelity. And so as we look to mitigate the impact of the pandemic, it is really about meeting kids where they're at now, differentiating it, providing key interventions, and in the addition of those math coaches have been essential in that work. Along with that, we had a strong after-school tutoring program last year into the spring of, again, trying to mitigate those learning losses. And I think it shows in some of the data this year, in this year's MCAS, but I think it'll pay off in the years ahead. And lastly, we've added the early bird screener for kindergarten students and the speed dial K screener. And while we're looking at grades 3, 4, and 5 MCAS data, we know that our younger students have been impacted by the pandemic as well. And we have a lot of students who normally would have gone to preschool who did not go to preschool last year. They might not be in preschool this year. And so, looking to the future, we also want to make sure that we have a really good read on where students are when they come to us, and that we're, providing the instruction they need in kindergarten and 1st grade and beyond.
To wrap up on it. Excuse me, I got a couple things to wrap up on it, okay?
Okay. Are there any questions of the principals from any of the school committee members before Superintendent Lummis has 2 comments?
So thank you, Amy and Matt and Dan, and Jody for being here tonight. Really appreciate all your work, but especially being here tonight. A couple of things I just want to point out, and this, I'm just going to tie budget to action and support. You know, in the operating budget were the math coaches, and you know, they really do, as the principal says, support our teachers, organize interventions, help understanding how our kids are doing. They're doing the early bird screeners, that sort of stuff. So really crucial in our operating budget. You see the EL student success plans up there we talk about, but the fact that we've added both EL teacher and also EL support for families helps our EL leadership institute those with our teachers. So that's another thing that's from the operating budget. And of course, a number of these things are ESSER funded. So the tutoring and para support, but also the summer school as well. And so those are, and our updated ELA and then also math, curriculum will be ESSER funded too. So I do see very tight linkage between what you've supported in terms of our budget and the impact and the work we're doing on a crucial area, in this case of academic support. So it's really, really, really important to connect those dots, I think. Thank you, Mr. Bach.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, principals.
Thank you. Thanks.
Two more things, and if there's anything you want to hold off to another meeting, we can. There's the enrollment report, and there's also my goals. Mr. Chair, is there anything you want to focus on, or do you want to plow through all of it? I'll leave it up to you.
Well, just a servant of the committee.
What was the goal, and what was the other one?
By the enrollment report.
Enrollment.
Pretty straightforward, right?
It's pretty straightforward.
It's going to take.
Yeah, so let me jump to the enrollment report, which will be, I'm not gonna go through all the slides, you have all the detail. I'm just gonna point out a couple of things here. Oh, I'm not, hold on, not presenting yet. 1 second. Just make sure that's what's going. Oh, I'll take stuff. Okay. There we go. So this is our enrollment currently this year. You can see school by school, or grade by grade, school by school on the across the rows, grade by grade. The bottom row for a total of 833. Always like to look at this in terms of historically, and you can see obviously a dip last year. We had more students, more families homeschooling, but some pretty, pretty fair consistency over the last few years. I think an important piece is this, which is our 10-year enrollment history, and in the bullets there that all elementary schools except for East Gloucester have more students than 10 years ago. Not surprising. You can see here West Parish had a dip down to 319 and 320 when it was being rebuilt, and that's the same in any school rebuilding projects. So we're seeing that. We obviously were highlighting the difficult circumstances at East Gloucester the last few years, and now you're rebuilding a new school for them, and so we see declines there as well. But I think that's really significant that there's a lot of concern about declining enrollment, and it has declined over the past 10 years, and no doubt about that, by 183 students, which you see here. But at we're holding quite steady at elementary. DHS has added students each of the last 5 years. So that enrollment is holding steady, growing a little bit. But if you look 10 years ago to now, obviously a drop of 146 students overall. So hard to know if there's any trends here at this point. If you look 5 years and what the next 5 years are. But I think of note that we're not losing students year after year. That's been some concern, obviously, from other reports I've read. But it's just want to share that with you. That's really the primary takeaway is that slide. But I have to answer questions. One more thing to look at is our EL students, as you know, have been growing 10% each year. You see another jump up by 19 students. This is October 1st data, and I know we have more EL students than that. So we continue to add more EL students. for a variety of reasons. So I think by the end of the year, this will be at least another 10% growth from last year. I think this is.
I just wanted to make a comment about the high school enrollment. In the last 5 years, you might see an impact where Essex Tech grew bigger and took in more kids. So that might be one of the reasons why the high school has changed.
Yep.
But overall, I know the city census showed that we're getting more people in Gloucester. So it's
Yeah, more
an-
population.
Yeah, and I only know that because I monitor it for the licensing board.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see how we're getting growth in the schools. too.
Yeah, so we had a low of 796 in FY 2018. So that's school year 2018. And now at 830. Actually, I'm sorry, low of 763 at FY 20. So again, you know, it's notable, I think. You know, and Hart also, I've been involved in a lot of enrollment projections over the years. They are tricky things. They're very hard to, and affected by so many matters, so.
Cool. Yeah, so I just, well, I have a few chances left, just wanna, silver lining all this data is, at the, you know, Gloucester High School in O'Malley, just again, you grab every 6th through 12th grade out of Rockport, throw into those schools, there'll be less kids at both those schools than when Sam and I were there less than 20 years ago. So there's a silver lining, the fact that the GHS enrollment has declined, that it has some capacity to attract students from other districts. Because, you know, we were like 300, 320 when we were here. It was like a little tight in the hallway. It wasn't like when Jonathan was here and it was 375 and no science wing, but anyway, there's a silver lining here that you know, that lends capacity to attract additional students, and there's a lot going on in those two schools. I think, you know, as we continue to improve our communication out to the greater Cape Ann communities, you know, something, we had some issues earlier this year with the elementaries, and like going, oh, we had some people wanted to choice in, but there wasn't quite room.
Right.
Like, not an issue at O'Malley High School. Like, you want to come to GHS or want to come to O'Malley Innovation School, we got a seat for you. You know, come on in.
And you see that, so this is school choice in, I mean, from out of district, this slide here, and you can see at the high school, you know, I mean, it's a bigger place, obviously, but there is some, there's some numbers there, and then we hope to see those numbers go up as you were saying.
Sam.
Just back to the English language learner population increasing, I just noticed today in the paper, there was that article about Afghan refugees coming in. And I know that they're having a meeting on the 16th, and I didn't know if schools were invited to participate.
Christine Cass will be there. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Got notice for today, and already heads up that.
Great.
Anything else on enrollment?
Great.
Is there any,
Oh, shoot.
would we like to take up the superintendent's goals, or would we like to table them for a future? I can tell by your eyes, that you're going to table it.
This is still partly the effect of the time change, I believe, okay?
Yeah, I'm so done.
Melissa?
I just want to say the superintendent goals are very important and we're already behind
We're not,
timing.
no, we're not. We're ahead of
But-
last year. We were ahead of last year, I promise you.
Well,
If we delay the year, then another month, then we'll be on the same schedule as last
but with that being said, I'm more than happy to push this off, but not far, because I think this, we need to vote them soon. We're behind the ball.
But we do have them.
Are you saying you want to get this thing in place before the term ends?
And I mean, they were presented to personnel.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's probably the path that we're on to approve those ones, and I'm sure there's already work being done towards them, so it's not like we're losing
year.
time
Right.
to accomplish the goals.
So
but-
I'm not waiting to do work until I get through my goals, that's for sure.
So a recommendation, so did personnel take a vote to recommend, or?
We did.
Okay. So
Well, we.
So what you got, what personnel got, and you got in the last meeting was the summary of the
Summary, yeah.
summary. What you got now in the packet is, you know, much more detail about some timelines and evidence of deliverables. So, so that's really what you have.
That's what we didn't go through in personnel was the evidence and stuff,
Right.
but the goals themselves we looked at.
The only thing I'm just looking at, in case you want me to, is just what our schedule is for the next meeting. Okay, just give me a moment to pull it up and show it to you. It's what, which you've seen
Starting
it.
Melton next week, right? You start Melton next week?
Yes.
That's just only that we're not holding a real meeting, we're just doing that meeting for it.
What?
We're not Sawyer Meadows.
Oh, no, I was gonna announce that, we're, the Sawyer Metals haven't arrived, so we're putting it off until the 8th.
Okay.
We're putting off Sawyer Metal off
Oh.
till the,
December
the
8th?
December 8th,
Oh.
because we don't actually have.
So,
Okay.
They haven't.
so the next meeting looks, let me pull up, you can see it. What our plan was for next meeting. So this is what I shared with you the last, one of our most recent meetings, just about presentations and everything. So if you look at December, so I actually had surrounding goals in case we needed to vote there, but we have MCAS report from 6 to 12. That'll be longer than tonight's MCAS report. The plan, the update on the plan for ongoing improvement will just really be that, an update of meetings I've had, what we're already learning. And the budget development guides, the schedule, or, we'll go to B and F, and that's obviously just a schedule. So that's, there's one report from MCAS, it won't be short. And then the other 2 are really just updates. So, just so you know that, from the thinking me through.
But you tentatively put superintendent goals in there already.
Well, no, I did. I'm not quite sure why, but I did.
Do you think our 12-1 is gonna require an executive session? Because if not, I'd be happy to start that meeting at 6 and have that be the first one, work that through workshop style, and then at 7 kick into the remainder of the normal agenda.
Well, look, there are negotiations happening between now and then. So,
That confuses the public too, though, changing.
Twenty-nine.
29.
So, yeah, we will.
Next meeting is the 1st.
So we'll be here at 6 anyway for an update. Do we think the DJ takes a while? I'm trying to think if there's enough time and still in that, say, we kick a meeting off, so we're going to executive session to discuss negotiations. And we may come out of executive session to only begin the superintendent goals about, process, but we'll not, hit the rest of the agenda before 7. So if we get executive session done early, we can just kind of kick into it.
But then the public hasn't been notified that we're starting publicly. It's hard to just say.
Well, they're notified we start at 6, and they can, right, and that's,
Well, they're notified we start at 6 and then we say before that we're coming out at 7.
right, so we go the other way, we'd say we're not coming out at 7, coming out whenever we can.
So, we've got, I think, 3 weeks until then. We can work on timing and John can inform you in terms of timing, because we'll know better what the executive session, if there is one, needs to be.
It's just like one of those things where like, I think it was a really good move on committee leadership to move executive sessions up front so that we're fresh when those happen. Because it was always the end of the night, it was always like, oh, whatever, right? So same thing for his goals. I really don't want his goals to be at the end of the night where we're all just like.
I agree with that.
Yeah, me too.
Shoot. Kidding.
I'd much rather those be.
Okay, we can adjust
Okay.
the agenda so that it's as efficient as possible. We do all the important stuff first. And like I say, as of right now, we don't really have any idea what we're going to be talking about that in an executive session. It's just sort of a general idea that we might take. So in that case, I believe we're going to table the superintendent's goals until December 1st. In the evaluation process.
Will you be able to send us the information ahead of time?
You have it now.
It's in our packet.
Oh,
It's all
So
there.
it's all in your packet.
You can
Yeah.
all the,
study it.
Yeah, all the details in your packet.
well, I looked at that.
It's very colorful.
Yeah, it's all very.
Yeah, It's nice peach tones,
It's not very
nice sage
colorful.
greens,
It's moderately colorful.
well, compared
Did
to.
I not make it to the end of the packet? I thought I-
It's the one that was sent out.
On Monday, it was the
Okay.
update from Monday.
An update from Monday?
Yeah, so you got
So I
some, you
looked
got,
at it last week.
yeah, you got
Yeah.
enrollment, you got enrollment and MCAS on Friday, and you got, or Thursday, Friday, I think it was, and then you got,
Update. Okay.
So the November 8th one. Okay.
Well,
Yeah, we have it.
We also got one this morning.
That was- So that being said, we'll move on to our action items and we have already taken care of one of them. And we have an approval for the targeted assistance grant in the amount of $30,000. That's, I assume, for O'Malley and Gloucester High School.
This is part of the support that DESI provides to the two schools. It's professional learning community coaching, and so it's work on instructional practice with professional learning communities. PD, professional development coaching for engaging students. And then some of the instructional leadership team stipends. The team, I think just fantastic team that works with program leaders and administrators who work with Principal Cook. And also at the O'Malley, and also with Tier 2 literacy interventions. All those different, this grant helps to support all that work, which is directly linked to the actions identified in the turnaround improvement plans. All right.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the targeted assistance grant in the amount of $30,000.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Maria, can we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Carries unanimously. The update on, I was going to announce about the, I already did announce about moving Soy Metal Night to December 8th.
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Yeah, now we'll probably have BNF at 5 that same night. East Gloucester Veterans Memorial School Building Committee update. We had a meeting last week, which consisted almost exclusively of paying bills. The work is just going on. They did have a, and we do have a schedule. It's a little bit hard to.
Yeah, so what we're trying to get from the team is just a bulleted list of major pieces that are happening. And that's, you see this detailed schedule, which is very helpful. I'll capture a few of them. Essentially what's happening now on site is there, and John, you had to help me with this, is they're doing what they would call soil improvements, which is two different combinations of reinforcing the soil underground so it can sustain and hold the foundations. Okay, there's one where they're, I don't think I should.
Well, there are two. What they do is it's kind of like driving pilings.
Yeah.
You know, that they go down and bore a hole and either pour concrete or they do. They have a way of compacting stone and then using that as a foundation. And then they'll pour the foundation on top of that. This school won't have a basement, so it'll be like West Parish, and there will be a slab on grade. So what they're doing is stabilizing the earth around there, so when they pour a slab, it doesn't crack apart.
And so that's happening this month. Beginning next month will be when they start pouring footings. Follow that with the foundation. And that's then into the, that's through December, basically.
So foundation in December as well?
Yeah, I think pouring footings and, well, footings, you're talking about footings.
Yeah.
Yep.
The goal is to get the concrete in so they can work through the winter.
Yeah.
Because once the concrete is in, they can start putting steel up. And the, you remember when we built West Parish, like December was just beautiful. We were way ahead of the game. Then it snowed every day for the next 2 months.
And then just looking further ahead, February is when they would begin steel erection.
Yeah.
Do we have any problem getting steel?
Yes. I haven't got an update on that, but we made a big deal of getting that package out early in order to, and it was a great debate as to whether, you wait on that, on the chance that the prices go down because the price is high, or you move forward and get an order in so that you get it. And we went with the latter. So the cost of steel, my recollection was it was about $1.2 million in above budget, but we made some adjustments on other things to keep the budget in line so that we could do that.
And are they doing a gray water system for this school? I meant to ask that.
No, I have, it hasn't been discussed, so I assume not. It's been brought up.
Has there been any discussion about, I was just thinking about the second round of bricks, just went at the YMCA that you donate, and those bricks were not, I donated one, they were not inexpensive,
Yeah.
right? For the little walkway area was where the YMCA helped raise funds for the new facility. I'm curious whether the building committee might want to consider entertaining whether bricks could be sold out that front little, the outdoor classroom area, that will, the main entrance,
Yeah.
Because if you can find a way for people to pitch in, $1,000 for a brick, $500 for a brick, it's not gonna solve your $1.2 million.
Get your name on it, right?
Just an idea as far as we get the community without going, obviously the things funded by taxpayers equally across valuations of real estate, but there's other ways in which the community who want to support the school financially can be given opportunities, and that was one way the YMCA did it. That seems, they did 2 full rounds of it because it was so successful the first time. There was like a waiting list to get bricks, they've done more bricks than they had, I think, thought they were going to. I might be wrong with that, but another 2 full rounds of it. Just an idea.
Well, it's probably something that we could do for something extra, something that wasn't, that we've eliminated.
Right, yeah, exactly, to bring something back.
Because a lot of what we eliminated to bring the budget and balance were landscaping things like that. A lot of the benches went away because the theory was that if we come under budget on some things, we could buy those back at the end because they don't go in till the end. So that may be a good idea for some of those doing, but to be some sort of vehicle for doing it. I don't know that Jeff is interested in building projects.
I think what you would need is you need someone who come January had more time on their hands, to chair of that sort of thing. Who's inclined, with that sort of idea.
I'll see if I can find something.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It takes, having done the old stadium, it's an effort.
Great idea.
So other than that, there's not much else. That just I drove by today. It's looking very flat and compacted, I guess. But they're there working and moving forward.
And the name is going to start.
Sure, I was bringing forward in December a process for the naming process.
Yeah, I did attend the conference last week, and there were 3 big topics of discussion. One was attendance, one was social emotional learning, and the other one was naming things, or as a lot of communities are having to deal with changing their mascots, coming up with new mascots, and mostly the discussions were about the public pushback on all of these things. But there was the superintendent from Medford who had dealt with renaming a school which had been named the Christopher Columbus Elementary School, and they took them 2 years. And she went through the process, and I've shared that with Ben. So when he comes forward with his recommendation on how we go about naming the school?
Again, I don't intend a two-year process.
We've got precedent in the district, there was no renaming of West Parish, just went back up. Fuller closed, there was no accommodation to that name, 600 kids just lost their school and went out, like, you just haven't closed East Gloucester, we rebuilt that, there's nothing to name. And then you're done, we've done it twice before now.
I will come up with propose a process to the school committee. And then the school committee will go on the process and then we'll pursue it.
But the point was, it's not easy.
I'm saying the
No
point.
matter what you do, there's going to be a lot of
Easy
traffic.
for you to say. We have to be there.
No, please don't say, well, I was here the whole time, like, you know, like, oh, yeah.
There's people.
There's a lot of talent, as there should
That's
be.
the right word.
Sure, but I'm saying, but we've done it before, you know?
No, I mean.
All right, we pushed off superintendent schools.
Yeah,
So,
so, yeah, exactly. So,
The other thing is the,
consideration of support.
and that letter has gone over to,
Yeah, so I wrote the letter that we approved last week, and that the Board of Health has agreed up with that. They're on board with that letter. I went back to them again about the bill part of this. And they're not gonna, until they know what the impact is on Gloucester schools, they're not planning to make a decision about how to react to this bill.
that's fine.
So we just have to get the letter to printed, send it to DPW.
Yeah.
It's all in motion.
Okay,
thank you, Lark.
anything else before we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, second.
Second.
Okay, Maria, roll call vote?
Mr. Plaza,
Yes.
Chairman Poe,
Yes.
Ms. Prince.
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
and Ms. Weason.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, and good evening. Happy Veterans Day. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock.
Another day of kids. I don't know if this is gonna